Hey guys, I've been getting a lot of requests about my build when I made the Spider Forest video. Well, not a lot, but a couple people wanted to see my build, so I'm going to show it off. I'm running Magic Find right now, so keep that in mind, but I'll show off what I'm using for the harder tier 16s, tier 15s, or whatever. I mean, I can actually run... I haven't tried tier 16s, but I ran Abyss and Courtyard with my pure MF, but RF is a pretty strong build, right? So I'll show off my main gear, which is this stuff here, like Rumi's Concoction. Self-explanatory. My opal rings increase elemental damage, a lot of life on these, and resistances. I do need new gloves. It's something I haven't really gave much care about, but this has increased attack speed and more life. Like, I cap over 10,500 when I'm fully geared. But yeah, they're just stashed away right now. And then I have the marble amulet, extra health regen, more spell damage, and resistances or whatever to fill in. I have lightning damage on there, so when I don't have my mobility gloves on for MFing right here, as you can see, I can have more life, and it still has increased attack speed. But I also needed dex on these to run my faster attacks maxed out, so that's what that's for, just so I can cruise around the map faster for MFing. This works for MF as well, but I also use it for Rampage when I breach. You can switch in Belt of the Deceiver or whatever other belt you're using after you get your stacks, if you want to do that. If not, just run whatever belt you're using. But as you can see, I have the double enchanted bone helmet, the elemental damage, and the righteous fire buff, the uber buff. Rise of the Phoenix, you need that for RF. Comb's Heart, almost max life, and a 1.5% life and mana regen. That's basically... That's from Merc Labs. I could have a 2.0, but I didn't want to put the time into it. Brightbeak, mobility pretty much. Let me show off. Doriani's is very good for damage. Obviously, the elemental damage increase, but it really hits your mobility. If you want to know my MF type of build, I use Ventors, increased quantity and rarity, and then the top rolled Biscos, obviously, this piece. I'll also roll or run with Goldworm. You could also, there's also Quant gloves you could use too, but it adds fire damage to your attacks, which it affects shield charge. And I use Elemental Equilibrium, which, if you don't know much about it, I'll try to explain it to you quickly. Basically, when I hit targets with a certain spell, they will get increased resistance on that spell, and then 50% decrease on other spells. So I'll hit them with lightning or cold, and then I'll, my RF's fire, it'll just melt them even more. That's why I have lightning damage on my shield charge. I always run some type of lightning damage to attacks. So shield charge will proc it. I'm also running Orb of Storms right now, which that's more of, it'll hit more targets before my RF hits. And RF doesn't proc EE, so that's why it's so nice. I followed Ziggy D's Righteous Fire, or it was Scorching Ray Inquisitor build. I did my own shit to it, after I had the core foundation there. But that's a good one to follow. But a lot of people go Marauder MF, so I'd suggest looking into that too if you wanted, or Marauder RF rather, if you're looking into doing that too. I mean, I know they can build a lot more off endurance charges and whatnot. Like, I switched between Rallying Cry and Enduring Cry. Enduring Cry is much more survivability, but Marauders can definitely scale a lot better with that. If you want the gem list, look up Ziggy D's build, like I told you. Like, I have Orb of Storms, and I have to run Rallying Cry with this, so it's sort of gimped by like 1, which is not a big deal. Then I run Stone Golem up here. Since I'm running Combs for the HP, I don't have the extra slot, so you just have to make do with what you can. Then I have all these supports. I'll just show them to you in case you want to mimic this. Then Vitality, Purity of Fire, and Power. That gives you your max resist from Purity of Fire, which helps. Even 1% helps a lot. earlier on, you're going to want to run Clarity instead of Vitality, because you're until you can sustain mana fully. Don't switch to Vitality until you can do that. But you see the actual gear I run when I'm actually trying to do harder stuff, right? Down here, I could probably use Opal Rings with Elemental and increased fire damage. That would be superb, but I'm pretty sure they're really expensive. Yeah. I don't know what else to say about that, but I'll show you how the build works. Normally, I run Scorching Ray, okay? And I'll switch the colors of my gloves because it's really cheap, and I'll use the other gloves. But I'll run Scorching Ray, which does a lot more damage to bosses, right? So I can run bosses a lot easier. But I recently switched back to Orb of Storms, which is what Ziggy D recommends you level with early on. It works good. Or you use that to proc your elemental equilibrium, like I'm doing now. Like you place it, it hits whatever 4 targets and keeps hitting, and that'll, you know, proc EE onto them. And for MFing, I don't really need Scorching Ray. Like he shows you, like it will go like this, and then you'll proc your EE off of your Orb of Storms and whatnot, and your shield charge. And then you'll just do a circle with Scorching Ray and continue, and that'll burn all your enemies down. But that's earlier on in the build. Like I said, look up his build to see how to really do it earlier on. Like I'm pretty much endgame now. Especially with MFing, I don't need it. Scorching Ray slows me down. But when you're doing a boss, if you're running Scorching Ray with Combs' build, you're not going to be able to run Orb of Storms, so you're going to have to drop it eventually and just rely on your shield charge, proccing E on single targets. But usually your RF will melt by the time, so you don't have to worry about it. Just make sure you're shield charging into the bosses, and then use your RF and Scorching Ray on the boss, and they'll melt very, very quickly. It's really nice. So this character's sort of like a hybrid, I'd say. Like, a lot of Marauders, they just, you know, rely on their RF damage, which my buddy went Marauder, and I generally out DPS'd him pretty well, but he obviously had more life than me, and his enduring charge build was a hell of a lot better. But that's up to you. I'd show you the Scorching Ray, but it's pretty much common sense. Just think of, like, if there's any, like, high life targets or anything with a lot of health, I would basically proc my E onto them and then Scorching Ray while I stand there and use my RF, and that's why it's so much DPS. But since I've been MFing, you can see what I'm doing. RF takes care of everything. Anything it really is a little slow on, with this helmet I got last week, it just melts through anyways, but the Orb of Storms will proc the resistance debuff, and then it's GG, right? So that's all there is to it. I think earlier on, Ziggy D recommends, and I also used it, was Firestorm Totem, which you use, you know, you turn Firestorm into, you use Totem support with Firestorm, and then you place them along with Scorching Ray, and you'll melt stuff pretty quickly. I shouldn't be fighting the freaking Breach Lord, but whatever. So yeah. That's what you need to do till you get up to like in the 60s, and then you can use the Phoenix Shield, and then once you can sustain RF with health regen and that shield and whatever else you can get, obviously Purity of Fire, then you can start running the Righteous Fire with Scorching Ray. But I don't really know what else to talk about. As far as the bandits, I killed all of them. I mean, you can do what you want there. I think he recommends you kill all 3 or go, or you help Alira, I think her name is. But this build, like with all the gear I have on, has the same effect on a tier 15 Abyss. I melt through stuff. It might take a slight bit longer because of the tier difference. But if I have my non-MF gear on, it's cake mode. But I've tried MFing Abyss too. It's definitely possible. And these guys freaking slow you down. It's really annoying. It like vortexes you into them. I hate these guys. Yeah, that's pretty much my build. I've just been farming Spider Forest like crazy. I found 4 doctors, and I've past 3 or 4 days I've been taking a break. playing other games, you know, getting a little worn out, but that's pretty much the build. I'm trying to think of what else to mention. It's a little tricky with your combs though, because there's no slots, so you have to get a little creative with that. Oh, my potions. Witchfire Brew. Creates a smoke cloud. You don't have to worry about that stuff. It's the 40% increased damage over time, which affects your RF. That's why that's so good. Your Sulfur Flask increases your damage. Creates concentrated ground on use, which actually works with my Inquisitor Ascendancy. You can look that up. It's not like a need, I mean, but it's just a bonus. Dying Sun increases the area of effect, which affects RF. Like I said, I use roomies instead of the Alchemist Quicksilver Flask. I'm using this to zoom around the map quicker. Like the fastest Quicksilver Flask there is in the game, I think. But, it's for mobility. But otherwise I'd use Rumi's Concoction. More armor and deflection with your shield, since you're using a shield. Earlier on, if you can't use shield charge, if you're like dual wielding until you get up to Phoenix, I'd recommend just use Flame Dash. It sucks, because once you get shield charge, you're going to be like, wow, this build's so much better with the mobility. You can just spam it. And Flame Dash has like 3 uses or whatever. But I wanted to show you, watch, here's what Dying Sun does. It increases your AoE, which actually means a lot, you know. More targets you can hit. It also gives 2 projectiles to a Deadeye, or Ranger, rather. So that's why a lot of Rangers use it too. It's nice. And then I have Blood of the Karui. This used to be a lot worse. It used to not heal at all for like 2 to 4 seconds, and then it would insta-heal you all the way up. But now it does 3,500 health over 2.6 seconds, and then insta-heals you to full. So with having over 7,000 health, like I run 9 to 10.5 to 11, it's the best potion in the game for a health build, like by far. It used to be really bad when it didn't heal, but now that it heals that 3k and then insta-heals you, I can sustain just with that perfectly. Some people will probably run other potion builds. I've seen them, I've tried them. It's all preference, I guess, as long as it works. Of course, like I said, Rallying Cry, Enduring Cry. Rallying Cry is for damage, so I can go to the map more. But if I'm going to tier 15s, you're trying to do harder stuff, I'd run Enduring Cry. Much more survivability, guys. Summon Stone Golem, health regen, that's what this is for. Health regen's always good. Like I said, Orb of Storms to proc Elemental Equilibrium. Same with Shield Charge, and Shield Charge is the best mobility spell you're probably going to get. And once you get it, you're going to be like, damn, this build's so much better. Righteous Fire, obviously. Purity of Fire. Shit ton of fire resistance. Like I said, I think it's 3% max, so it ups it by 3%. Every percent helps, and then maybe it's 4. But then once you use Empower and then like a level 21 Purity of Fire gem, it gets up to 5%. So that 1% helps a lot. Like I said, you're going to have to use Clarity until you can sustain your mana regen. Like you can see, I never run out of mana, even when I run Scorching Ray. But I'm rambling on. I don't know what else to really say about it. I'll run item rarity support. It doesn't affect currency or divination card drops, but I'll run that sometimes. It affects my AoE, obviously, because I have to replace my increased AoE. Oh, and also, when you're versing bosses, like you use increased AoE, and then when you get to the boss, like if it's a 1v1 or 1v3 or whatever, switch to concentrated, much more damage, and then swap it back out when you go on to the next map. That's pretty much it. 20% your gems if you can. Get level 21. 20% gems. But yeah, that's it. Have a good one.